right, everybody. We got another very special guest for you all. I want everybody to welcome to the show Evan Carothers. Welcome, Evan.
Hey, nice to be here.
Thanks for joining me. And I want to apologize. I've been doing this all past couple weeks. If crazy noises happen behind me, I had a cat that just had surgery, and right now he's asleep. But at any moment, he could just get up
Yeah,
and start howling.
no worries.
And yeah, so Evan, it's your first time on the show, first time I get to chat with you. So I got to put you through the gauntlet of the origin story. How'd you get into comics, and then at what point were you like, I want to create these things?
Sure. So I got into comics a little late in life compared to other people. I grew up in northern Wisconsin where there was not comic shops anywhere near me. And I got into comics as a reader when I got into college and I had a little bit more access to them. And I've had a big passion for tabletop gaming my whole life. I'm a huge nerd with pretty much every category of nerddom I get into. And I have a side business called EC3D that I've been doing for getting on 10 years now. That's focused on tabletop gaming. So I do 3D modeling for 3D printing of like miniatures and scenery, and I create supplements and like battle maps, all kinds of stuff in that category. And tabletop gaming requires a lot of similar stuff to comic writing, like thinking about storylines, world building, all that kind of stuff. And one of the projects I did was a sci-fi project called the Ignis Quadrant, and I started making tabletop gaming stuff for this. And as I got more and more into it, I was like, I really want to get this into a more visual medium, and I've always wanted to do comics. So I just kind of did my research, figured out what I would need to do to, do it, kind of make it look professional, and work with a good editor to get me on the right starting path, and then just kind of dove into it.
So were you doing like when you say tabletop, more board games, more RPGs? What were you into?
So my personal interests lie a little bit more in the RPG category, but the stuff that I create is pretty agnostic. It's designed to be used for, you can use stuff for like board games like Zombicide or skirmish games or tabletop games. It's kind of agnostic, like different miniature, designs and scenery that can be used for different set pieces and stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm also a huge tabletop fan. I
Oh, nice.
have regular nights of like board game nights with my friends, and like right now 2 D&D groups that get together. So I'm
Nice.
definitely in that camp. Uh, what was the sci-fi thing that you were thinking of moving over? Was that Toxx or is that something else?
No, so that was called the Ignis Quadrant. So one of the things I did with my tabletop gaming was kind of find categories that didn't really have a lot of stuff in it yet that I thought I could really be impactful in and really kind of be creative in. So I did some D&D stuff for a while, like really fantasy focused, your traditional D&D agnostic type stuff. And then I got into sci-fi more. I've always been into it personally, but I didn't do a lot of gaming in that category. But I had a chance to play a little Starfinder, and that kind of got me hooked into that. That's a Paizo product. That's kind of the sci-fi version of Pathfinder,
Hmm.
and that was what I kind of targeted initially for the miniatures and scenery I created. But then it's stuff that could work for like 5 parsecs from home. There's just a number of open world kind of sci-fi RPGs. So the idea with it is it's just all these characters and figures that people can use for their PC characters or build NPCs around that can be agnostic. But as I started to build this, I started ideating this world and story in my head that was a little bit more my own angle on it, and that was what eventually spun into the idea for this comic.
And have you ever made that comic, or is that still
Yeah,
something that you're working on?
yeah, that was the first one I did. So I kickstarted each issue that is a 5 issue miniseries with a prequel issue. So I did 5 Kickstarters for that. That was my first comic publication, which I self-published. So that's done. You can buy that online, physical or digital. And I'm working on the next story arc for that now. And that's, I've done a lot of stuff since then, but I would say that's still kind of my first love is that world.
How many books have you done since then?
Yeah, so I have that series, which has one collected trade of 6 issues, and then I did another Kickstarter called Mixology Noir, which is a double feature horror book, and then Toxx now is the one that I have going live, which is another 5 issue miniseries, and I have like 6 or 7 other ones in various stages of completeness at the moment.
Oh man, so you're hard at work making a bunch of different cool
Oh,
stuff.
I'm thoroughly addicted.
What was it about comics that drew you in, as opposed to just continuing with the tabletop stuff?
Yeah, I mean, so I still do the tabletop. This is like a kind of a new thing I'm doing at the same time. I still love the tabletop gaming,
Mhm.
but the thing about comics that's awesome is like I what I love about comics is the experience of creating it myself as much as anybody reading it. I mean, if to be truly frank, like I don't love selling comic books, but it's a necessary evil to continue to create them. Like I'm not a huge fan of having to do, you know, position it in the market, like do all that fun stuff. Or not always fun stuff. I just love the act of creating it, like putting the story on paper, getting out from what's in my head, and then having, you know, a really good artist kind of lend their vision to it as well. And just the act of seeing this come to life is unbelievably rewarding. And you can do so much fun stuff with comics that you can't do. Like I love doing tabletop gaming, especially 3D stuff. Like you build these big worlds, they're physical, you can see them, but you're still limited by, you know, how much time you have. If you want to sit and paint all this stuff, you know, how much money you want to spend and storage you have for all this stuff. But you can build in a gigantic, you know, insane world with special effects, with huge, giant star cruisers, with all these different things, and it's affordable because it goes on paper, right? And you just got to have a good artist to bring it to life.
Yeah, that's why when it came to tabletop, I love board games, but RPGs were always so much more fun because it's uh, it's just a pad of paper and your imagination. Like
Yep.
we didn't need a whole lot to get it done, and it just made it so much more fun. Uh, yeah, that's interesting. So sitting here with me right now, you're just a miserable mess. You can't stand being here with me.
No, no. It's. I mean, I didn't mean to be over dramatic there, but if I, you know, if I had unlimited money, I would hire someone to sell the comics, and I would spend my time and energy creating them. Right. I love talking about that stuff because at the end of the day, it's exciting when other people get into and excited about the thing that you create, and you're like,
Mhm.
oh shit, like there's more people than just me that you know think this is a cool story. Like the analogy I tell people if you're into tabletop gaming, particularly RPGs, for me anyway, creating a comic series is like being a dungeon master and also playing every character at the same time. Like I'm doing every aspect of an awesome, well put together, in my opinion, RPG, and I'm doing, you know, I'm playing every character, I'm designing the story, I'm designing the world, and I get the satisfaction of every one of those roles at the same time.
Yeah, is so it's like being a dungeon master and playing everything at the same time. But I always find the fun of being a dungeon master is how do I fuck with all the characters?
Oh yeah. Well, you kind of got to do that with yourself. You got to shoot your darlings a little bit and add the drama in there to keep the you know keep yourself and the readers guessing.
Yeah, I remember actually a recent game we were doing, and I was the only one in the party that could talk to the other race that we were with, and so
Hmm.
me and the DM were just back and forth like discussing what we're gonna like, what's going on, what we're gonna do, and I'm just like telling everybody like, no, just trust me, just do this. And I literally
Right.
just like took everybody on the side quest, and then when we got to it, everybody's like, so what's going on? I'm like, oh yeah, we're gonna fight a bunch of orcs right now. And there was like, what are you doing? And I just
Yeah.
I love that moment where I got to take the entire campaign and just move everybody along with me as if I was the DM in that moment.
Right.
Those fun moments are great. How do you find when you're creating them, like you get to have those kinds of moments in your own head while you're making these stories?
Oh, 100%. And, you know, when you think about a story arc or, you know, plot line, whatever you want to call it, it's you have kind of the rough story beats broken down in your head initially, but when pen hits the paper and you're actually like scripting these individual issues or breaking them down, you know, things change and you come up with like, oh, maybe this I should do this or that was a bad idea. I'm going to rework this. And it leads you into places you never expected the story to go. Much like, you know, in a good tabletop gaming or RPG session, like the DM might have a rough plan, but if you get a good, fun group of players, that shit goes off the rails real fast in ways that can be very entertaining and fun. And like I said, you know, I'm a big fan of sitting down, you know, late at night with a whiskey and kind of just jotting my notes down on paper and coming up with this stuff. And it's just kind of like a playground for my brain. I mean, it feels very similar to a really good pen and paper session when I'm creating these things.
That's awesome. So you've created all these great stories and labeled your label is Wolven Press, correct?
Correct.
So it's all under there. And now you are on Kickstarter once again with
Yep.
your latest issue of Toxx. So I guess a great way to start is just what is Toxx?
Yeah. So Tox is a post apocalyptic story about a world in which humanity fucks up and kind of damages the ozone layer in a way that prevents the ozone layer from working as it's intended, which is to prevent like radioactive, harmful rays from space to hit the Earth. So suddenly the Earth's getting bombarded by radioactive waves, gamma rays from space, and it mutates people, it kills the land, it does all kinds of terrible shit. So this was 30 years ago. Humanity is now sterilized and driven underground. All the species on Earth have mutated because of all this radiation. And 30 years from now, this woman, Claire, finds herself pregnant miraculously. And the story is about her kind of determining what it means to be a mother in a world where that wasn't even possible for humanity. What, the shifting landscape of, a child coming into the world means for all these different factions. Some view it as a resource, some view it as salvation. She doesn't, exactly know what it means yet. And it's kind of, a lot of things rolled up in one, but it was initially very much created by my experience of me and my wife having our first child during the pandemic. So there's a lot of kind of personal stuff written into this as well.
And this so the first issue here I have on screen, the cover A,
Yeah.
is a very shocking image.
Yeah, I debated about how this would be received, but I'm like, in a wasteland where your life expectancy is short, I didn't mention all the details of this world, but part of what happens is you're constantly getting radiated, so you have to do this process called toxing, hence the name Toxx, that stops this radioactive mutation from happening, but also risks you immediately mutating rapidly. So like life is not a guarantee, right? So no one told her when she was a kid, like, you shouldn't smoke when you're pregnant, right? They're like, we're gonna live every day at a time.
Yeah, I think especially in this day and age, I mean, just the image of a pregnant woman smoking conjures some thoughts of a lot of people. Did you get a lot of slack for that first time you
You
brought that
know,
out?
I didn't. I think the intended effect was had. I mean, if you read the book, anyone that reads it is going to understand like that's not who she is necessarily, but it's very much kind of an homage to like a Tank Girl, Wasteland throwback as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I got a Tank Girl vibe from it, and I mean, immediately it clicks with me because that post-apocalyptic feeling,
All
that
right.
kind of Fallout, if you've ever played that video game.
Oh, best
Uh,
franchise that's ever existed, in my opinion.
yeah, so it gives that feeling with like a strong punk rock vibe, which is always close to my heart. So
Hell yeah.
it immediately hit hard, and I love the shocking nature of it. I think there's a necessity in this world for a little bit of shock value in it.
Yeah, I think
Eh,
it came, like I said, the impetus of the story was in COVID. Like it was right in the heart of it when my wife went into labor, and we couldn't even have family members in the hospital with us. It was just us. Every nurse and doctor had, PPE gear on, so you could barely see their eyes, and the whole experience felt very crazy. And I was like, God, can you imagine? Like, what if this was even worse? Like, if this was a true wasteland experience, and that was where the idea for the story came from.
yeah, that's crazy because we all have our own COVID stories, and
Oh
I
yeah,
know a lot of people are at, at wit's end with the whole COVID story thing. But I mean, it was a part of all of our lives, so it's
yeah,
important to talk about. And for me, it's like as just a single guy who was working and considered quote unquote essential, I the most I had a similar feeling to you with that post-apocalyptic feeling, but to me it
yeah.
was like I was driving and there's just nobody. Uh,
Oh yeah, I imagine.
like I was driving in a big city and you just saw nobody.
Like
Where
Last of
like
Us vibes.
yeah, where a month earlier there's people everywhere, they're walking all over the place. Like you
Mhm.
almost were telling yourself like, man, I just wish people would go away for a minute, and then they did. And it gets eerie. So, and I do like that you decided to take this check and not just do the, in my opinion, lazy and overplayed of like COVID, the comic that a lot of people
Yeah,
were doing. I was like, okay, I get it. We can tell these stories in a little more of a creative way, please. And it
right.
seems like that's what you did here. Um, so you're back on Kickstarter with this,
Yeah.
and you're doing it's issue 4.
It's issue.
Uh,
So I did two double issue campaigns. So the first one
okay.
was issue 1 and 2 bundled, and then this one is issue 3 and 4, with
Mhm.
obviously back issues available. So it's a 5 issue miniseries. And as a reader of comics, I hate single issues. It's just like give me more meat on the bone, please. So that was why I kind of wanted to do two at a time.
Oh, really? I am a huge fan of the month to month format. So I do kind of agree with you when it comes to Kickstarter because when
Yeah,
I get my Daredevil, I get it every month.
right. It's
But
like 30 days or 1 month consistency, right? Like Kickstarter's never exactly month to month format.
yeah, so was that part of the reason that you went that route was
It
because
was, yeah. I mean, I've backed so many Kickstarters myself where it's like even the most aggressive, Kickstarter creators in the game are still. It takes time to print and fulfill and do everything after a rapid campaign, so you're still never getting those books every month, and it's important to keep these things like top of mind. And then as a creator, there's a lot of mental overhead in the Kickstarter campaign, so being able to do 3 campaigns for a 5 issue miniseries instead of 5 campaigns is big, for my mental sanity.
and how I mean, this is your however many you've done Kickstarter. How have the previous ones gone for you? Have you been seeing a building in your fan base over time?
Yeah, the Agnes Quadrant was pretty great. I had a nice like list of folks that supported my tabletop gaming that came over to the comic stuff as well, so that was pretty successful. Then I mentioned I did that horror noir double feature. That was not as successful as my sci-fi, but it was quite a deviation, from the stuff I had done historically. And Toxx is doing well as also. Toxx is also being published in the direct market by Blood Moon, so it's coming out to comic shops. The first issue final order cutoff was, or it was supposed to be in July 19th is when it came to the shops, but it's been a few weeks delayed in printing. But you should be able to find Toxx on the shelf in a week or so here in local comic shops that buy indie stuff.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I gotta imagine that's especially for the indie crowd. That's tough because you make a name for yourself doing one thing, and obviously you're creative, so you want to do multiple things.
Sure.
And someone like, for instance, I probably would have been one of those people who said, "I love sci-fi. I'll check out the sci-fi book, and I enjoyed it. Get through.
Mhm.
Oh, what's Evan's next thing? Horror? I'm not really a
Yeah,
horror
not your
guy,
jam
so."
for sure. No, and I don't blame people for that. I mean, everyone has their preferences for sure.
Yeah. Has there been a lot of like does Kickstarter give you the metrics to say these people are coming back even from not just from project to
Yeah.
project, but from issue to issue?
So Kickstarter doesn't do that, but BackerKit, which is a common piece of software people use on top of Kickstarter, does do that. It connects to your Kickstarter accounts and imports your previous backer list and lets you see who's return backers, lets you mark it and email the people that backed your previous stuff that aren't on your current projects. So that's pretty much everybody that does Kickstarter is using BackerKit or a
Mhm.
similar platform on top of it.
Okay. So let's take a look at the campaign. I know you
Yeah.
got so when we're airing this, you'll have just 4 or 5 days left. But as we stand now, you are getting close to your funding goal with quite a few
Yep.
backers. 94 backers. That's nothing to sneeze at right there. Uh, let's see.
Yeah, I'm sure you're
How
familiar with this, and most people are, but like Kickstarter, the way it works is you get a huge influx of folks at the beginning, hopefully,
Yeah.
and then a lot of people, sign up to get notified of progress, and then they get notified 48 hours before it ends. So I'd say 80% of the funding of my and most Kickstarters is in the first 48 hours and the last 48 hours. So I'm feeling pretty confident that we'll get across the finish line at the end.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you're even that far with time to go, yeah, that last 3 or 4 days, I'd say you could easily pass the mark, and you probably even do it before then.
Oh, for sure. Yep.
Um, this is one thing I've been loving about Kickstarter recently, and it's all due to how they changed their uh, the back end and doing add-ons and everything. These
Hmm.
nice clean tiers.
Oh, yeah. And they finally added support for images in the tiers. Like we've been
Yeah.
waiting for that for years.
Uh, have you noticed? Was there any thought of doing some big $400-$500 tier, get this special thing for Tox, or did you?
Yeah, I mean, I thought about that, but honestly, like historically, I've done a lot less variant covers, but I wanted to try an option with more variant covers because it gives me personally an opportunity to work with more artists, which I love. But two, you see some Kickstarters that have like 20 covers, which is insanity. But there's a balancing act. So I wanted to try a few more covers, and I wanted to also create something at a little bit higher level. But I really feel like I wanted to spend my time and energy focusing on creating more comics and even, the next Toxx issues versus having to, do graphic design for like collector's boxes or figure out how I can really crank up the pricing. And one of the things that I personally do is that the comics are done, if not, or mostly, if not completely done before I kickstart them. So it's really tough for me to do stuff like having people drawn into issues or things that other creators do, that are kind of a higher price item, and it's all done digitally, so I don't have any original art to sell or for the artist to sell. So I might explore some of that stuff in the future, but I guess I'm relatively new to Kickstarter still. This is my what would be my seventh comic Kickstarter, so I didn't really get too crazy on the high end, but it's something I'll definitely consider in the future.
Yeah, it's tough because I see some of those go really well, and I think it works better for artists who are kickstarting their book. But I just think some people go a little crazy because just do a few variant covers, put out the book, have a reasonable
Yeah.
goal, and you'll do well as long as you can promote it and do all that stuff. I don't think you
Hmm.
do much more. The caveat there is what is the book and what is the audience? I mean, I've been kind
Right.
of diving into the world of the not safe for work comics. Not that I'm a
Sure.
fan, I'm just curious as a
Oh, for sure.
person watching. And in that world, that's the world where you want like 20
Oh
variant
man.
covers.
I'm so interested psychologically about like the science of that. I have a few series coming down the pipe that have female leads, and I'm like, God, do I do an NSFW cover just to try to pull in some of that, that audience? Because I think it's obviously like there's people that love that stuff. There's
Yeah.
plenty of campaigns that are really successful, but I also feel like you're going to get other comic fans that see that and they're like, this isn't what I'm into, and immediately alienate them from the project entirely.
I think where I always come from, and I don't know if you know who Pat Shand is, but I was having this
Oh, for
conversation
sure.
with Pat Shand. And Pat used to work for Zenoscope.
Mhm.
And Pat loves that not safe for work, the kind of
Oh yeah, Cheeky, right?
sexualized.
Isn't that his
Yeah.
his imprint?
And one of the things I can't remember if this was on camera, off camera, but I'm sure he doesn't mind either way. One of the things I was always curious about was I think the thing that drew me away from Zenoscope was the fact that they did those covers as the A cover. So like when I
Mm.
opened up previews, that's what I saw. So I'm like,
Hmm.
and the joke was like, look at the booby comics. Ugh.
Yeah, yeah,
And then like I got sent a few and I'm like, holy crap, like these are actually kind of good comics
for sure.
with good stories. So it drew that line for me of like, okay, that old adage of don't judge a book by its cover, but it's
Yeah,
comics, so
yeah.
of course we do. And I think the best thing to do, and I told him that he doesn't work there anymore, but
Hmm.
I told him this is like if that's unless the book is about that, I think the best thing to do is make that the variant, and then the people who love that
Right,
will come for it. And then someone like me, who's the variants were actually more interesting and actually sold the book better to me, and I thought that would work better for the wider audience. So, but it is a fine line because who is your lead character, what
right.
and all that
What
stuff.
message is that sending about them before you even open the book? Yeah,
E-
exactly.
exactly. Like, are you trying to tell a very serious story about somebody and then immediately
Right.
sexualize them?
It's
It's
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. I've a
It
couple thoughts on that. Like one thing that's interesting to me working with so many artists now is that, for an artist to get really good at art, they have to be students of human anatomy, right? Like,
mhm.
and anybody when they start focusing on anatomy and understanding anatomy, both male and female figure, whatever you might be looking at, you realize like the lines of the curves, the things that are appealing to the eye. And I think all artists, even if they're not into drawing, NSFW stuff, like just love drawing anatomy. So I think it makes sense for a lot of artists to kind of naturally enjoy drawing that kind of stuff. And I don't think it even necessarily is sexualized to them when they're doing it. They're just like, I'm doing art of anatomy here, you know?
It's a strange back and forth because I've tried to discuss it with a few different people in that they're into that world. Because to me, I'm like, I don't get it. It does nothing
Sure.
for me. It's just unappealing. Like yeah, all that. But it's not necessarily a I want to put this as tame as possible. It's not like super sexual for them, like they're going home and
Exactly.
looking at it in the dark under the pillow or something, but
Right, right,
but there's something just appealing about it, and I've even seen it not just to say about women, but I've even seen some of it in the male space too, where it's
for sure. Yeah,
like it's dudes in awkward positions that don't make sense to
right.
me either. But yeah, it's I don't know, it's a interesting conversation in comics that I've just been diving into.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
I have an upcoming book I'm working on. That's a espionage spy action series, and it's a female lead who is a fashion model that is also moonlighting as an assassin. And that's
Mhm.
one where I'm playing around with some NSFW covers, but it's an angle of I'm doing a couple of these, and I'm working with the artists that are creating them to create the cover, standard cover, where she's clothed, but then there's a variant cover where there's some stuff revealed. It's mostly just like topless nudity, and it's not smut, it's tasteful. But then other aspects of the cover are changed. Like it's instead of a day scene, it's a night scene, and it's a different wig and like tweaking it a little bit. So it's 50% of the cover is the same, but the SFW and NSFW are also like interesting, different representations of the like an art take on it. I'm hoping that's kind of an interesting thing for the audience when I get to that point of releasing that one.
And that's something that sounds to me like it works for the
I
story
mean,
you're
I think
telling.
so, but we'll
Yeah.
see how it's received.
Because I say that it turns me off, but at the same time, I'm a huge Bond fan, and it's not like every woman on every cover of a Bond movie is, you know, the most power pose woman in the world.
Yeah,
Like we all know what's going on
right.
there. But yeah,
I
so
mean, yeah, I
let's
think it's
jump
a
back
difference
over.
between. Oh yeah, sure.
I wanted to talk about because I was looking through the book and looking through the Kickstarter today, and for Toxx, and one of the things that jumped out to me, and I've been noticing it more and more on Kickstarter because it used to be this thing on Kickstarter of like it's a really good book, but like it's a Kickstarter book.
Sure.
And one of the things that a lot of people have been up in their game on, it seems like you have as well, is the art. So like here we got the cover to issue 3,
Hmm.
and I'm just blown away by how good the art is on this book. So I'd just love for you to sing the praises of your art team here.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I have to give credit where credit's due. Like all these artists I've worked with are amazing. Um, and I had I think, an advantage coming into comics because for all the years of tabletop gaming work I did, I spent a lot of time working with artists. So I have a good understanding of relationships with artists in terms of concept art for my tabletop stuff, actual art for the different books and stuff I created. And I knew if I was going to do comics, like this is not a knock at any creative because making a comic at any level is hard, but it's the difference between like a professional or a well done comic and let's call it like a lower tier indie Facebook comic is drastic. Like
Mhm.
art isn't everything, story is huge, but I think if I was gonna when I decided I was gonna do this, I was gonna just do everything in my power and find a way to be able to pay for good artists to make it look as good as possible. So I wanted, my two goals for Wolven Press that I tell people are I want the books to look like as professional and well done as anything you could find on a comic books shop store shelf, even if you're getting it from Kickstarter. And I wanted like the design and the branding, everything to be memorable. So that's kind of what I'm shooting for.
Yeah, and just looking through the first 2 issues, like you can tell that that's accomplished. Like it's not it, it doesn't give that old vibe of a Kickstarter book. Like this does feel like something that I could see. I guess the best praise I could give it is something that like Image would put out. The
Yeah.
quality of the art is at that level. Um, and I was really
Yeah.
like blown away by it. It was great.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I'll credit to the artists, of course. Ben Worrell is the series artist. I mean, I had an amazing time working with him. Uh, he did such a good job of bringing the different mutants to life and giving this world, kind of an atmosphere and a feel that was really matched the tone of the book and also, really paralleled, the feelings and emotions that the story was trying to convey as well.
Yeah, and I don't want to give away any story beats, but it's the first page of issue 2. Do you mind if I give a little bit away?
Yeah, be my guest.
So
Spoiler alert, anybody, but yes, for sure.
yeah, a quick spoiler, but it's you had the character and like part of his face was mutating,
Yeah,
and then it slowly showed it like going back to normal. And that first image of the character's face, like almost like Two Face, where like half of his face was mutated and all. I could sit in front of a piece of paper for 10 years and not come up with that. It just the level of detail and everything that he put into that image was just stunning. I loved that. Immediately was just like, to me, like, this is it, like you said, it adds an authenticity. It's something worth
right.
reading. And
Yeah,
yeah, I just want to, yeah, I just want, I'm finding new ways to say, like, I really love the art.
no, I appreciate that. Like one of the themes of the book was obviously the main storyline is about Claire, the main protagonist, like becoming pregnant in her journey, but also that character you just mentioned, his name is Axel. He's kind of the secondary story thread, and it's about him. He gets affected by the mutation and the toxin, and immediately, mutates to a point where this mutation is unexpected. You never know what's going to do to you, and then these mutants become shunned by the human race, right? Like they don't have to. They don't. There's no hard and fast rules about this, but nobody wants to see their future because the inevitable for every person is their own mutation. So they kind of get shunned by the human race and they get pushed out. And it was interesting to explore that kind of a thread of a storyline. But what Ben did with the character and the emotion, that he brought to the look and feel of it, to really, really paralleled what I was hoping, readers would get out of that.
Yeah, and that's something that's hard to find in any artist, even at a big two or quote unquote mainstream comics. Emotion in a character, and then not only that, but just like the difference in the character's look and the face and everything is really hard to do. And
Right.
yeah, he killed it on that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'll pass on the compliment.
So yeah, another thing we talked about earlier, but I absolutely love that you did this right here. Saying that the
Oh,
book
for
is
sure.
coming to direct market, like it's that shows that it's not about just the money. That like, hey, I get what you're here on Kickstarter, but these guys are printing it too. It'll be out. I mean, unfortunately, you said it was delayed, but it'll be out your local comic shop as well. It was really cool
Mhm.
to see on the campaign because I don't think a lot of people do that. They try to hide that fact a lot of times.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of publishers will do that. A lot of publishers will pick up books that were kickstarted through like a whole story arc after the fact, and they don't mention it. There's other really cool indie publishers like Band of Bards and others that are doing that now, and I think you'll see that become the trend as Kickstarter picking up more and more steam. It's becoming. I think the amount of comics in Kickstarter is like exponentially more now than it was even a couple years ago, which does make marketing and standing out more challenging. But as a consumer of comics, you have the world is your oyster in terms of what you can find on there.
Yeah, it's definitely created a shift in the market because you're seeing uh, less of a middle class, for lack of a better term here, but less of a middle class in Kickstarter and way more competition, which in one way is great for someone like me who's going on there and trying to find good books,
Right.
but another way is not so great for some creators who were maybe making two or three times what they are today on the platform because there's so much there. But
Right.
that's the open market. That's that's
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of how
It's
it
no,
goes.
no. Yeah. It's bound to happen. And then you have like the Berserks and like the Good Omens now, like all these big times books that could do really well in the direct market, but are also coming to Kickstarter, which I think there's historically been a very big divide in the people that support the local comic store and buy direct market books and people that buy off Kickstarter. Like there's not a lot of crossover, and any publisher will tell you this too in their research. So that's why publishers are like, do your book on Kickstarter and then we'll bring it to the direct market because you're not cannibalizing your own business a lot. But I think that's going to change. I think a lot of the historically traditionally direct market comic readers will realize like shit, there's a lot of good stuff on Kickstarter. I should get over there. And that's, I guess, people that not just the big two, like the big two people that read Marvel and DC. That's always probably going to be direct market, but indies are thriving on Kickstarter. It's only going to get better.
Yeah, I mean, there's a divide in the Kickstarter community, and I was on one side at one point, but I've kind of changed my view, and I'm not really sure how I feel. And I'd love to hear your feelings on it. It's the
Yeah.
people who see like the booms, to be particular, and no offense to Boom, I love you, Boom, but being on Kickstarter and kickstarting books that would obviously make money in direct market. Like, there's no way that this book isn't going to make money in direct market.
Right.
Kickstarting it and then bringing it to direct market, and saying there's one side saying, well, this sucks because they're sucking up all the steam from Kickstarter, and the other side saying, well, they're bringing more people to the platform, which
Right.
is trickling down and all that. I was on the side of like, this really sucks because I don't think it's trickling down at all. I think they're just stealing money from other people, not stealing,
Yeah.
taking away customers from other people. Do you have a feeling on that? Or,
Yeah, so that's a really interesting topic because I've thought about this a lot over the years with tabletop gaming.
mhm,
When 3D printing first got popular, I would say 6 or 7 years ago, there was a lot of people, including myself, who were like the first really early kind of leading people in the market selling 3D printable stuff and doing Kickstarters for this. And it was like the heyday of it, right? Because there wasn't for consumers, there wasn't a lot of stuff available. And then really big gaming companies that had, giant resin printing warehouses and didn't need to be on Kickstarter were starting to do these Kickstarters that were making, $1 million and sucking all the air out of the room, a lot of people thought. But I'm kind of on the side that you mentioned before, like, the free market is going to always win out.
mhm.
It's whether we want to like be upset because, oh, they're there now, like it's going to happen. It's up to us to plan for that, figure out how we can capitalize on that and coexist. And every market will have corrections. Like, I think 2 years from now, a lot of the people that are creating comics on Kickstarter that aren't that are doing because they think like I could just get on there and make some money or just, fund my comic quickly, will dry up and disappear if they're not into it for the long haul. Um, and the interesting thing about Kickstarter is that you can't do in the direct market that I think is fun, that I think every publisher should get on board with, is the relationship you have with your buyers during a campaign.
Mhm.
Like, you can, unlocking stretch goals, having feedback, being able to in real time add new stuff to the campaign, getting like viral sharing, like all that kind of stuff. You can't do that in a diamond preview. Like, there's no world of that. So those kinds of interactions and things is what smart publishers should be trying to build right now. So
Yeah,
I guess I don't have an opinion on if it's good or bad necessarily. We'll see, but it's going to happen whether we want it to or not.
yeah, and having somebody like the face of your company in this market to be like, this is why we're here and this is how we're going to do good, and this is how it's good for you, the consumer. Like, you need kind of that
Right.
person out there talking to the customers like you are and so many creators are. And
Right.
unfortunately, that tends to land on the creator a lot of times, even at the big companies.
I mean, dude, that's whether you're in the direct market or not. Like, there's so many stories about people that are, get a book published by a higher tier publisher, or picked up by a publisher that they were like, yes, this is it. I'm going to create the book. They're going to do the marketing for me, and then the publisher does basically nothing. Like, it seems like in this day and age, it falls on the creators to do so much of their own marketing, and a lot of people are finding there's not a lot of value in that. You mentioned Pat Shand earlier. Like, I'm in a couple different discords that groups where there's him and like Charlie Stickney, who used to be at Scout, who does
Yep.
the Galarian White Ash stuff now. Like, he preaches from the rooftops. Like, if you're a creative and you want to make comics, the direct market does not support making money really anymore in the current day and age. And you're beholden to different things that don't make sense. And you should just take control of your own destiny, get out there, market and sell your stuff yourself. And that, I mean, it makes complete sense.
Yeah, what's funny to me, and not that I'm not a big deal or anything, but I see these because I've seen a few of them go from super indie, Kickstarter, Indiego, one of these places, and go to the
Mhm.
big two. And I'm not going to name names, but and then when a lot of us on my level who were interviewing them and promoting their stuff talk to them, be like, "Oh, you're doing this big thing at X publisher now. Come on the show and talk about it." And the first thing they always tell me is, "Well, I'm not allowed. They don't let me go on your show." I'm like, "So you have to promote your own stuff, but you can't
Yeah.
do it on the shows you've been doing it on." because we're not cool enough, or I mean, we're not big enough is what it really
Oh
is.
man.
But yeah, it's sad how that market works. But
You got to wonder who's making those decisions. Like, I don't know. I'll badmouth the person in marketing who's making that decision, because you think you want the people who are supporting indie comics and doing it because they love books, not because they're getting some paycheck to do so and they work for some big media outlet. Like, these are the kind of, for lack of a better term, like grassroots outlets that, you and I love comics. We're doing this because we love it. We're not
yeah,
making shit tons of money. Like, that's the kind of people you think they would want promoting your stuff.
yeah, and even if I bring one person to buy, like I don't know, you still got one more person. I'm always confused by it. I do understand how like a Marvel or DC or
Yeah,
Image is thinking about tens of thousands of issues, not one or two, but
right,
it's still just it always rubbed me the wrong way because I'm like, I hear all these stories of how even at the big two, three publishers, the creators are expected to go out there and promote the book and make it a success,
right.
but then they're not allowed to at certain places. It's
I
confusing
know.
to me.
Yeah, it's been interesting as I've gotten more into comics, and I'd like to make my plan is to make a very long term run at this for, to bring my own stories to life. But
Mhm.
there's a lot of folks whose goals, of creating their own comics is to get recognition, build, an audience, and eventually get hired to write series at the big two that they've wanted to write their whole lives. And that's an admirable goal. I don't take that away from anybody, but that is not. I'm not even remotely interested in that. I would turn down a job offer to do that because I just want to make my own stories. And honestly, like, I truly appreciate folks like yourself that are willing to sit down with me and talk about this, because making comics can be pretty lonely at times. Like,
Yeah.
other than the artists and the people I work with that I, kind of email and chat with over Discord or whatever, like, very rarely am I sitting down face to face with somebody, especially in this day and age, and talking about my comics. So I appreciate this. If nothing else, at least for the conversation. But obviously, of course, anyone that wants to listen and check out the book is great too. But I just appreciate chatting with like-minded folks.
Something I never asked somebody would be interested. As somebody who writes solo, do you ever wonder what it's like to be a part of one of these writers groups? Like, I the most popular that comes to mind is like Jackson Langley and Colin Kelly. They write everything together. Have you
Yeah.
ever done that before? Or have you ever thought like, what is that like?
So yeah, actually, so I will say I don't. I write some stuff by myself, but a couple of books, including Toxx, is actually co-written. Um, Toxx is co-written with Eric Palicki, who's actually an amazing writer, and that is my favorite part of the process. The books that I've written and co-created with people, it's so much of a more fun creative process because you're riffing off each other, and you can fix errors earlier in the process. You can kind of both have a shared vision for how stuff comes together, and you have so many more creative juices than me just kind of like going off and doing it by myself. And I would say, like, the Ignis Quadrant, which is purely my creation, I come up with the stuff by myself, is the kind of like, imagine that as like your D&D group where, like, you got every weird character from life in there, and it's super fun. But like, you leave some sessions, and you're like, I'm not even sure if we made any progress tonight, but I had a lot of fun. Like,
Mhm.
that's kind of that for me. But like, the co-writing is where you're like, if like this is like a well televised, podcasted, shared, like, live play group where we want like everyone to enjoy it. It's kind of like how those feel differently.
It's
I
I
don't know if I
wanna try
explained
it
that well, but
sometime because in my head, it sounds like so much fun. Like, just you and a friend being like, "And then he does this," and then maybe I'm like,
yeah,
dramatizing it in my head, but, like, it just seems like so much fun to sit down with somebody like, "Okay, this is the idea." So then we just craft it together somehow. I don't know,
yeah.
there's something romantic about it and, in terms of creating that comes to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do it too. Like, the one that I've historically done the couple times I've co-written here is, like, since it's my idea, I'll kind of flesh out the worlds, the idea, like the rough story beats and everything, and then bring in, like in the case of Tox, it was I kind of came up with the flow of the story, and then Eric, who is a professional, substantially better than me writer, did the actual writing of, like, page, like, here's the panel, here's the this and this, and then we worked together to edit it, and with the help of an editor. So that's an example of where, like, I wanted to make sure that this story was really really well done, professionally. And then there's other ones where I've done it all myself, which is good too. But the times when I've worked with other people, you just like I said, there's more creativity, but you can like having partners you can trust and that are better than you. Like I love when artists I describe a frame and I'm like, this is what we should do, and the artist is like, this is not the best way to do this. We should change your perspective. Here's my idea. And I'm like, yeah, you're obviously an artist. Like I'm gonna trust your opinion on this.
Yeah, yeah. That's another thing. Like what the artist comes back with,
Yeah.
you got to get that feeling of like, I had this cool idea, but that's way cooler. That that thing is way
Yeah.
cooler that you brought back to me, especially with your art team you got here.
That's one of the funnest parts about creating comics is like that I'll stay on this D&D analogy because you're a kindred spirit, but like when you go through these scenes, I've personally had a couple times when I had scenes in play where I'm like, fuck, I should commission somebody to just make me a piece of art for this, just so I can like see what this would look like visually, not just in my imagination. And now imagine you have every day like the for me it's an addiction at this point. I try to have a couple stories going at a time where I'm getting new art in my inbox from an artist hopefully every day so I can see some of this. And it's like these stories and these visions, suddenly I'm seeing them in my inbox every day. It is the best drug that I've ever found so far. It's amazing. It's so cool.
That's great to hear, man. So I guess so to wrap things up a little bit, we got the
Yeah.
Kickstarter. You are, as we're recording, hopefully when this launches, you'll be funded and you can talk about stretch goals then, but
Yeah, for
you
sure.
still got a little bit to go. Have you thought at all about stretch goals, or is that something that you
Yeah.
don't?
If you scroll down a little bit, there is a couple posted. In the first campaign, I did 2 postcards. You got to scroll down probably 2/3 of the way or so.
Here's some of that awesome art I was talking about,
Oh
everybody.
yeah. Yeah, right
Oh
there.
yeah.
So in the first campaign, I did 2 of these postcards, just kind of like a fun tongue-in-cheek "Hello from the Wasteland." And then we have 2 more of these that will be stretch goals for this campaign. So if you back at a physical level, and we get to the stretch goal level, which I'm confident we will, you'll get these included in your package. And for folks coming who didn't back the first campaign, I have extras from the first campaign, so you'll get all 4 of the set. So you can send your grandma a "Hello from the Wasteland" postcard, or put it on your desk, or do whatever you want.
Oh, that I just imagine my grandmother getting this,
I'm
which
waiting for
I
some
love this
stories of
image,
of
but
people sending these to people.
yeah, it's and some of these covers, dude. We didn't talk enough about these variant covers, but maybe you can say something now because you got some great covers here
Yeah.
too.
So what a lot of folks don't know about or think about, I guess, with Kickstarter, when you're in it for kind of a longer haul like I am, the goal of a Kickstarter is like very rarely does a Kickstarter pay for the books. Like these books cost $3,000 to $4,000 an issue to create, with the art and everything. And very few Kickstarters, unless you're like a really well established creator, pay for that. And then you have the cost of the printing, which is, depending on how big of a size of print run you do, between $1 to $2.50 an issue, shipping, all this stuff. But the goal of these Kickstarters is primarily to pay for a print run substantially larger than what you need for the Kickstarter. So then you have back stock to be able to sell in future Kickstarters and at cons. So, my strategy here with all these variant covers is I want to be able to at a con, local or otherwise, be like, set out all these different single issues that have just drastically different and interesting covers to try to catch people's eyes and try to get backers that might be interested in different kinds of art. So we'll see how that shakes up, but that's my thesis.
I mean, you got cool ones. I'll say that. Especially, I mean, these two right here, cover A and cover C for issue 3, are just awesome images. And then,
Yeah. And that's one thing I did too. Like that one with the lock symbol is direct market only. So you'll only be able to get that one pre-ordered or if they get it in stock at your local comic shop.
which I find important too, for if you're going the direct market route. It's a small thing, but I don't know. There's something about it. Like, don't just reprint the Kickstarter cover.
Right.
It just, I don't know. It's small. It's almost petty. But as a consumer, I'm just like, okay, that just seems
Right.
shitty. But so I like that
I
you
mean,
did that. And once again, here
yeah.
for issue 4.
Publishers don't have to let creators, kickstart their crowdfund their books. I guess that's obviously a decision for the creator too if they want to go with that publisher, if they won't let him do that. But I'm a believer in like make an effort to make your direct market release different and interesting to try to capitalize and try to get some crossover purchasers and stuff as well.
Look at this guy right here.
Blake, yeah, you
The
know Blake?
fuck? What the fuck? You hired Blake? You know that guy's a
Yeah.
Kansas City Chiefs fan, right?
Yeah, well, I'm so far outside of football. I'm from Wisconsin, so I used to be a Packers fan. And once COVID hit, I just forgot football even existed. So,
I'm an Eagles fan, so I'm angry at him because I have to be angry
yeah.
at somebody for that Super Bowl. No, I love you, Blake. I do. So yeah, you got a good looking creative team here too. I love it.
Yeah,
So-
not only can we create comics, we look good on paper.
I mean, that's in some cases more important, right? Like, so yeah, like we said, the campaign when this airs has a few days left, so everybody should go check it out. We got some stretch goals to look forward to, awesome covers, all that stuff. If people want to follow you for this campaign, the future campaign, do you make terrible life decisions like being on social media?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a requirement at this point. I will say,
Yep.
so if you want to check out the Kickstarter, I have a domain that redirects to it. It's Toxx Comic, TOXX comic.com. And then I'm on social media, Wolven, WOLVEN_press. I'm on the old Twitter X, whatever that thing is called these days, and Facebook, Instagram, and I'm checking out Blue Sky and what's the Instagram one? Threads. I don't know. There's so many social medias these days. I'm trying to keep up with it.
Dude, I got a whole page on my phone because you got Threads, you got
Oh my
Hive,
God.
you got Blue Sky, you got X gonna give it to you. It's so much
Yeah.
going on,
Nice.
and I can barely keep up with just one.
Oh
So
man, way too much work. Like it'd be so much better for all of our sanity if we just quit them all. But we got to help people find our books.
yeah, and then people keep inviting me to Discords because I don't know. Apparently, people like me or something. I don't know what's up with that.
There's some fun Discords. I have some good dialogue in some of them. There's other ones that I'm just like, I might have to turn these notifications off right now.
I love Discord, to be honest. I mess around on it a lot, and like you, we're probably in some of the same ones together too. But I just sit there and listen to Pat and Charlie talk to each other nonstop. And I'm just like, this is fascinating. I should be working right now, but this is fascinating. Everybody.
I don't know how those guys they have the output they do, and they're always there answering questions, always like with advice. Like I respect the hell out of those guys.
Yeah, Charlie confuses me because I could ask him the stupidest question and he'll like answer it with this huge like thread, and I'm like, dude, I asked you like, what's better, peanut butter or jelly? Like, just chill, man.
He's like, look, I'm going to tell you that, but I'm going to tell you a lot more.
So everybody out there watching and or listening, you know the drill. Links in the show notes down below to the Kickstarter, so check that out. I promise you the book is gorgeous. I've said it a million times in this interview, and you will not be disappointed. So Evan, thanks so much for stopping by, chatting with me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, and I look forward to doing it again soon.
Thanks for having me.